D.E. Vacordigaler, my name is James Nagle, welcome to The Irish Nation Lives. British authorities in Dublin had been caught totally unprepared for the intelligence war, but by the start of 1920 they were ready to respond. In December, the Lord Lieutenant, Sir John French, had summoned an advisory group. They suggested that spies be used to infiltrate Sinn Féin and assassinate high-ranking members of the party. The attempt on his life at Ashtown shortly afterwards galvanised French into action, and he began a purge of the upper ranks of the police in Ireland who he felt were insufficiently opposed to Sinn Féin. The Inspector General of the RIC, Joseph Byrne, was forced to take a month's leave and was replaced in an acting capacity by T.J. Smith from Belfast. Even after his return, Byrne was not consulted on police matters and resigned in March of 1920. Walter Edgeworth-Johnstone was left in place as the head of the Dublin Metropolitan Police, but a new Assistant Commissioner was placed under him, W.C. Forbes Redmond, also from Belfast. Redmond was given charge of G Division and tasked with reorganising it following the losses it had suffered against the squad. On arrival in Dublin, he convened a meeting of all DMP detectives and told them that he would give them 1 month to get Collins, or else he would order them to resign. Also involved in the Irish situation at this time was the British intelligence chief Sir Basil Thomson. Thomson had been appointed to head up the special branch of the London Metropolitan Police in 1913 which, amongst other matters, dealt with intelligence on Irish revolutionary movements outside of Ireland. It was to Thomson that Roger Casement was taken after his arrest in April of 1916, and it was he who decided to weaponise Casement's diaries against him, photographing and circulating sections of them relating to his sexual activities. In April of 1919, Thomson was appointed Director of Intelligence at the Home Office, a newly created position which put him in overall charge of all intelligence agencies in the United Kingdom. There were widespread fears of a Bolshevik revolution in Britain, and his task was to analyse all intelligence on revolutionary movements for the Cabinet. In A2, an agency dedicated to rooting out revolutionaries from the armed forces, Thomson found a man of talent and promise. After serving in Salonika during the war, John Charles Byrne had turned spy, posing as a Marxist and infiltrating unions connected to the army. In August of 1919, Thomson directed him to turn his attention to Irish political and cultural movements in London, such as Sinn Féin and the Gaelic League. There, Byrne presented himself as Jack Jameson, a revolutionary seeking to undermine the British state, and he promised the one thing the Irish were desperate for: weapons. By December, he was in Dublin with a letter of introduction from Art O'Brien, the Dáil's representative in London. He quickly made himself known, and on the 8th of December, he met face-to-face with the Director of Intelligence of the IRA, Michael Collins. Also in attendance were Richard Mulcahy, the Chief of Staff, and Rory O'Connor, the officer commanding the IRA in Britain. The British had succeeded in putting a man at the very heart of the Irish Republican movement. This wasn't the only threat Collins was facing at this point in time, and the most dangerous one came from an unexpected direction. Like Byrne, Timothy Quinlisk had fought in the war as part of the Royal Irish Regiment, but was captured by the Germans in one of the first engagements in October of 1914. Shortly afterwards, he became the first POW to volunteer for Roger Casement's failed Irish Brigade. After the war ended, he was arrested for desertion, brought back to Ireland, and discharged from the army. For help, he turned to Michael Collins, the Minister for Finance who had previously headed up the Volunteer Dependence Fund. While accommodation was found for him and paid out of Republican funds, Quinlisk's attitude to Collins quickly soured. There are a number of different stories as to what happened. One is that Collins gave him £100, which he promptly lost at the Galway races, and he became angry when Collins wouldn't give him more. Another is that he asked to be given a job in the IRA as a training officer, but was turned down due to his cavalier attitude. Whatever the reason, on the 11th of November 1919, Quinlisk wrote a letter to Dublin Castle offering them information on the Republican movement. "I have decided to tell all I know of Sinn Féin, and my information would be of use to the authorities. The scoundrel Michael Collins has treated me scurvily, and I now am going to wash my hands of the whole business." By January of 1920, G Division was reinforced from outside and committed to shutting down the squad. A well-connected source had turned traitor, and a spy had been placed at the heart of the movement, feeding back detailed descriptions of his meetings to Basil Thomson. Any of these on their own would have been enough to bring ruin to previous conspiracies. This time, however, Collins and the squad were able to identify the threat stacked against them. and neutralise them. Redmond, the man sent from Belfast to reorganise G Division, proved to be the weak link that brought down the whole thing. Possibly disgruntled that Thomson and Byrne had made more progress than he had, he berated the detectives on one occasion by saying, "You are a bright lot. Not one of you has been able to get onto Collins's track for a month, and there is a man only 2 days in Dublin and has already seen him." This statement made its way to Eamon Broy, a typist with G Division who had met with Michael Collins in early 1919 to plan the intelligence war. Broy reported this immediately, and suspicion fell on John Charles Byrne. Had Redmond been left in place to rebuild G Division, he could have destroyed Collins's network and became a serious threat. On the 21st of January 1920, 2 4-man sections of the squad were deployed to kill him. They stalked him from Dublin Castle to Harcourt Street, where Paddy Daly shot him in the back of the head. When news of the killing broke, the detectives he had brought with him immediately left for Belfast, and G Division resumed its downward spiral. Next was Timothy Quinlisk. Again, he was rumbled by moles Collins had placed inside Dublin Castle. It's possible that Quinlisk was called there to make an official statement which was typed up by Eamon Broy, or another double agent saw him in the building and reported on him. Quinlisk may have been used to try to lure high-ranking officials out of Dublin Castle who the squad were trying to kill, but this all came to nothing, and it's likely that Quinlisk continued to try and organise a meeting with Collins with the intent of handing him over to the British. He finally got his meeting in February. He was told Collins had left Dublin and would meet him at Wren's Hotel in Cork on the 18th. Shortly afterwards, the IRA intercepted a telegram from T.J. Smith, the acting Inspector General of the RIC, to the County Inspector in Cork, telling him about the planned meeting. When Quinlisk travelled to Cork on the 18th to be on hand for the capture of Collins, he was met instead by members of the Cork No. 1 Brigade, who took him outside the city and executed him. After his initial meeting with Collins, John Charles Byrne had returned to London but had remained in contact, looking to organise further meetings. While Collins was delighted with his new source of arms, Frank Thornton, one of the Deputy Directors of Intelligence, had his suspicions. These grew after the statement made by Redmond, and further meetings were delayed while an investigation into Byrne was conducted. On the 20th of January, Collins too was convinced that Byrne was a spy, writing to Art O'Brien, "I have absolutely certain information that the man who came from London reported I was growing a moustache to Basil Thomson." Byrne made a number of trips back to Ireland, but after he was given details of a meeting which was subsequently raided by the British, all members of the IRA were ordered to avoid him. Had he or his handlers taken the hint, he could have survived, but in their eyes they were on to a good thing. Thomson had dreams of building an empire-wide intelligence network, and capturing Michael Collins would bring him prestige and promotion. This blinded him to the fact that one of his top agents' cover had been blown, and Byrne was sent to Ireland again in late February. He searched for every contact he could find, insisting that he urgently needed to talk to Michael Collins. His movements were reported to General Headquarters, and eventually an instruction was given that he was to be executed. Byrne was told to go to a drapery shop on O'Connell Street and someone would take him to meet Michael Collins. On the 2nd of March, he met Paddy Daly there, who took him out to Glasnevin. Getting off the tram, other members of the squad made sure they hadn't been followed, and Byrne was taken to the back entrance of the Albert College, now part of the DCU campus. "I told him that we were satisfied he was a spy, that he was going to die, and that if he wanted to say any prayers he could do so. The spy jumped to attention immediately and said, 'You are right. God bless the king, I would love to die for him.' He saluted, and there was not a quiver on him." Other reports, however, say that Byrne protested his innocence to the end, telling them that they were killing the best friend that Ireland had. These were far from the only threats Collins and his men faced during this time, and there is some evidence that Byrne was running a gang of spies in Dublin who fled immediately following his killing. On the 20th of March, Thomas McCurtain, the Lord Mayor of Cork, was shot dead by the RIC, who attempted to pin the killing on internal IRA feuding. Efforts to do the same would be made in Dublin, and March also saw Magistrate Alan Bell make headway on shutting down bank accounts holding Dáil funds. But their actions in early 1920 proved the robustness of Michael Collins's intelligence network, even when sections of it failed. Art O'Brien had failed to properly vet John Charles Byrne, and Collins's desperate need for weapons led to an immediate face-to-face meeting. Unlike the Irish Republican Brotherhood of old, which had been torn asunder by informers, Collins had recruited moles at the heart of the British establishment, which were able to warn about Quinlisk's leather and Byrne's real mission. The relentless pursuit of G Division agents in 1919 and the killing of the new Assistant Commissioner shortly after his arrival all but finished off the DMP as an intelligence source. Britain realised that they were losing the intelligence war as well. Basil Thomson will hang around until mid-1921, but his failures will see him sidelined. In May, as they commit to a police war in Ireland, deploying ex-servicemen who come to be known as the Black and Tans to reinforce the RIC, Colonel Ormonde Winter will be appointed Director of Intelligence for Ireland and Deputy Chief of Police under Major General Hugh Tudor. With the task of creating a unified intelligence system under police control, Winter will soon make himself top dog in Ireland, and the next major opponent in the intelligence war. January 1920 sees the first attacks against RIC barracks sanctioned by General Headquarters, and in return the first reprisals by the RIC. The Dáil bond drive kicks off in the United States, but relations between Eamon de Valera and the Friends of Irish Freedom will worsen in February due to statements he makes on Irish concessions to Britain. At the same time, in Westminster, the Government of Ireland Bill, which will eventually lead to the partition of the island, is introduced. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to be kept up to date with new episodes on the anniversary of major events in the Irish Revolution and the Emergency, and check out the social media links in the description. Accordia, thank you for joining me on The Irish Nation Lives. Slán go fóill.